Tarnation! The public have come to Planning Commission meeting. Yes, and they want to speak.
We must flee.
Hello again. Welcome to What Hat Do You Wear? Part 3. I am Brent Bateman, the State Property Rights Ombudsman. If you're watching this video and you have not watched Part 1, the difference between legislative, administrative, and quasi-judicial decisions, and watched Part 2, the Planning Commission, then stop this video right now. Go back and watch those first. That's important. No, go ahead. I'll wait. Okay, fine. Brief recap. In Part 1, we talked about how local government officials make either legislative, administrative, or quasi-judicial decisions. A legislative decision makes law. An administrative decision applies the law, and a quasi-judicial decision interprets the law. In Part 2, we talked about the role of the Planning Commission and their important legislative role to study, draft, and recommend to the Council a general plan and amendments to ordinances, as well as their occasional administrative role to hear and decide land use applications. Today, in Part 3, we will really bring these concepts home. What do they mean, and what role does the public play? How can the public contribute? And in an upcoming video that you can show to the public at the beginning of a public hearing, I will address the public directly. I want to let the public know how they can best contribute to the land use decision-making process, so watch out for that. And again, let's set our quasi-judicial hat aside. It deserves its own video. This discussion will focus primarily on the legislative and administrative decision-making processes. The power of local government to make and enforce land use laws is not inherent. It is specifically delegated to them by the state. Land use power is derived from the police power to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the citizens. The local government has great discretion to decide what it wants its town or county to be, and accordingly what zoning and land use laws it will adopt. Basically, our system gives a local government some power to tell people what they can or cannot do on their land in the interest of the public good. But in order to do that, the council must formally pass ordinances. This process of passing ordinances is the legislative process. Now, the public's role in the legislative process is huge and absolutely critical. The local legislative body, the city council or county commission, are elected by the public to do its work, and they should listen to the public tell them what they want their town or county to be. Yep, that means that when a legislative decision is being made, there comes a point where the public has a right to speak. All right, we as the Planning Commission of the beautiful town of Pleasant Vernal, Utah, will now consider whether we should amend our zoning ordinance to allow a pet crematorium in our very quietest and best smelling residential zone. We will now open the floor to public comment.
I am in favor. I am sick and tired of my neighbor throwing her dead pets into my yard.
I am opposed to this proposal. New pet crematoriums will unfairly compete with my old pet crematorium 2 blocks down the road.
If this wasn't something we all wanted, why did they name the road Roasted Cat Street? And for the record, it was just the one cat that one time. Thank you.
When are you yahoos gonna fix the potholes over on Wipeout Street?
If you approve this, children will die. Won't you please think of the children?
Yes, think of the children.
Thank you. This was all great input. Thank you to our wonderful and helpful public. As a planning commissioner or city council person, as long as you are wearing the legislative hat, you can and should consider all of this input when making the decision whether to amend the ordinance. The state law requires that the Planning Commission hold at least one public hearing where the public is allowed to speak when considering a legislative decision. Your local codes may require more public hearings than that, such as at city council meeting, and that's fine. The public must be allowed to speak at whatever meeting that you designate a public hearing. And if you are making a legislative decision, you must hold a public hearing at least once. Listen to them, consider what they have to say, and then make your zone change or other legislative decision. What about when we are making an administrative decision? What's the public's role then? All right, last week we amended our zoning code to allow pet crematoriums in the SSH1 zone. This week, we have an application from a Mr. Howard Muttbuster who would like to open a pet crematorium in the zone. This is an administrative decision, people.
There's a lot of people here from the public, and I think they want to speak. I don't think they want pet crematoriums here.
State law does not require a public hearing for an administrative decision, only a public meeting.
But does our local ordinance require a public hearing?
Yes, it does.
Okay, let's open it up to the public.
If you approve this, traffic will increase on that street. My kids play on that street. Children will die.
If you approve this, burnt pet hair will be released into the atmosphere. My children breathe that air. Children will die.
If you approve this, pets are going to start mysteriously disappearing. My children love those pets. Children will die.
When are you dinglings gonna fix the potholes?
I don't have evidence. I prefer public clamor. Please make your decision based on public clamor. Public clamor! Public clamor! Public clamor! Public clamor!
We can't. That's illegal. For this administrative decision, we need evidence. Facts. Relevant, probative, objective facts that prove or disprove whether or not this application complies with our ordinance. Clamor, meaning the opinions, fears, and unproven conclusions of the public. That was okay to consider when we were making a legislative decision. That was when we were deciding whether or not to allow pet crematoriums in the area. But we have already decided that now. Now someone has applied, and our job is to decide whether or not their application complies with our ordinance, because if it does, our answer to them is yes. Administrative decisions must be based on substantial evidence. So, what do we do with all those folks that show up at Planning Commission meeting, pitchforks and torches in hand, clamoring about an administrative decision? Well, there are some options. Option 1, we can decide not to hold public hearings for administrative actions, or at least not to hold public hearings on every administrative action. Option 2, if we do hold public hearings on administrative actions, we can make sure we understand the difference between public clamor and evidence. And option 3, we can try to educate the public regarding their role on how to best fulfill it. Let them know that clamor is unhelpful at the administrative stage. Let them know that during an administrative decision, evidence, not opinions, is what is needed. The public's role here is important. In fact, it's critical, but too often is misdirected. As local officials, we want to know what the public thinks and what they want. Their opinions are useful when we are making a legislative decision, but during the administrative process, we are applying, not making the law. Although this seems most often when the public shows up and has the most to say, this is the time to distinguish between evidence and public clamor. Managing this process and avoiding making administrative decisions based on public clamor is one of the best ways to make a correct and legally supportable decision.